Welcome back from spring break, students. Let me move this. Y'all don't want to look at my kitchen. All right, welcome back from spring break. We're picking up on chapter 2 of Fahrenheit 451. And hopefully this week more of you are going to actually watch these videos. I have decided to change how I'm doing them a little bit, so hopefully they'll go a little quicker. I did realize last week's were a little bit long. And y'all have to understand that this is maybe my favorite book to teach. I've taught it every year of my 15 years of teaching. And because I think it's that powerful and that important. All right. So just before we get started, this video is going to cover questions 1 through 7, excuse me, on your questions that I gave you that are on the same page as the same OneNote page as your reading guide. So we're going to do each of these videos based on what each each daily reading section is. And I'm also going to tell you the questions that are covered. Now, I may or may not go over the questions. I try to hit all of them, but I've got a little small set of notes over here to the side that I'm using. And I've also got my book, so I'm going to constantly be looking down. I'm reading passages to you, okay? So hopefully I hit all these. If I don't, do not hesitate to email me, text me, get to office hours, anything to ask me if you have any questions, because I'm not purposely trying to leave these vague. I want you to do better than you did last week. I want these to be good answers, okay? I'm hoping to make this as useful as possible, and hoping to not just talk about the book itself, but what Bradbury's doing with this book, which is brilliant, okay? And it is really necessary today, okay? So speaking of that, we're starting off right away. We had left off with Montag and Mildred. We're sitting in their hallway, basically, looking at a bunch of books Montag had hidden up in a ventilator grill. And they were going to try to read these things, which we're going to see is not really easy. Think about how many of you struggle with reading comprehension now. And now imagine that you've never really been trained, that you didn't have my class or Miss Greeno or Miss Campbell's class, or middle school even, where we kind of talked about how to read. And they know how to read, but they don't know how to process, really. I mean, there's a difference in the two. So right away as we're starting, let me read you this very first section of this first paragraph where we see them sitting there. It says, the parlor was dead, and Mildred kept peering at it with a blank expression as Montag paced the floor and came back and squatted down and read a page as many as 10 times aloud. See, Montag's having a very hard time processing this. I mean, one of the things that reading does, if you do it religiously, is that it will help you build a better attention span, something that we struggle with. If you do not have a good attention span, reading a book is nearly impossible. Your mind just wanders too quickly, and then all of a sudden you realize you've read 2 or 3 pages and you don't know what you read. I imagine most of you struggle with that. It's not an uncommon problem. But Mildred here, what's going on with her, not with Montag so much, is that she just can't unplug from her technology. She keeps looking in there where the TV is, and she's just like, she doesn't know what to do. I mean, we're that way today. That was not even an exaggeration. Think about how many of us, if you come home, you immediately turn on the TV without even thinking, and stuff's just going on in the background. I do that constantly. I'll have the same 8 or 9 series, TV shows that I'll watch on Netflix, and I'll leave it on in the background while I'm doing other things just because you're used to having it. But more than anything for you guys, and I hate to rely on a stereotype for discussion here, but you guys can't unplug from things like your cell phones. Think about how, even in class, I'll tell you something like, hey, I need you to put those all up. We're not going to fool with them right now. And then 10 minutes later, one of you is pulling it out and looking at it. I don't think it's a disobedience thing. I don't think it's a disrespect thing. I think it's a habit thing. It's just automatic. We're so used to those things, We watched a video earlier this year where a guy talked about you should charge your phones out in the den, not in your bedroom. Most of you would really struggle with that because it would grate on your nerves that your phone was out there. And what could you possibly be missing? What alerts? I mean, what Snapchats are you not getting? I mean, we just do not unplug anymore. And so Mildred's a great example of that here. Now, I hope none of you are as bad as her, but it is pretty bad. A little bit after that, though, we get to start seeing more about Mildred. This is a good Mildred characterization section. And again, if you didn't think she was terrible before, you definitely are getting there. We see a lot about her selfishness being highlighted. This is like the topic she likes to talk about. She says, Montag picks up a book. He says, that favorite subject, myself. He squinted at the wall. That favorite subject, myself. I understand that one, said Mildred. Now think about that. Mildred gets that because, her favorite subject is herself. She constantly talks about that. She's like, we shouldn't read these books. They're about dead people. They don't matter. When that's just depressing that all she cares about is the immediate, the right then. And that's all that matters. She says at the top of the next page that I'm reading here, it says, Mildred kicked at a book. Books aren't people. You read and I look all around, but there isn't any body. He stared at the parlor that was dead and gray as the waters of an ocean that might teem with life if they switched on the electronic sun. Now, said Mildred, my family is people. They tell me things, I laugh, they laugh, and the colors. Now, of course, she's not talking about a real family. She's talking about the TV. She says books are stupid because they're not real people, but she likes TV because they are. I mean, and technically she's right. There are actual people that are actors. But the fact is that the people on TV are much less developed than people in books. I hate to tell you. I mean, it's a difference in active and passive, participation. In a book, you have to kind of picture the person yourself. In a TV show or movie, they're right there for you. There's nothing to do. So it's kind of ironic that she feels that way. Now, she starts thinking about what's going to happen with the books. And she makes a statement that aggravates me no end. And most people and most teachers, in fact, won't even stop and talk about this, but I'm going to. She says, if Captain Beatty knew about those books, she thought about it. Her face grew amazed and then horrified. He might come and burn the house and the family. That's awful. Think of our investment. Why should I read? What for? The fact that Mildred sees that TV is an investment is just pure stupid. All right. An investment is something that you hope will return value. There is nothing about TV's return value. First of all, monetarily, once you hang them up, there's a brand new version that's come out and your TV's probably worth half of what it was. It's like a car. Cars lose value when you drive them off the lot. That TV is all, you guys could I spent $1,000 when I got my very first job on saved up for this really nice TV that you could, for $1,000 now, I could get a TV that is a trillion times better. All right. So, Mildred thinking it's an investment. And the fact is that not only are TVs not an investment, they're not returning anything, they're actually taking away in a lot of cases. They're actually damaging us. So the fact that she thinks it's an investment is just beyond ridiculous. Well, apparently it upsets Montag too. He launches into this huge speech about what's going on in his head. And then I'm going to read this passage. Now, I'm going to apologize now. There is some cursing in this. I'm not going to read those words, okay? There is some cursing in this book. Usually it comes from Beatty, which is totally fitting from the character. Cursing is another way you can make a character a bad guy. There's two things cursing does. With good writing anyway, all right? If it's like entertainment writing or movies, it's just there's no purpose for it. But what happens in novels typically is your bad characters, the characters you're not supposed to like, will use that kind of language a lot. And also the positive characters to let you know how upset they truly are, okay? I'm not saying it should be used. I just want to kind of give you the insight as to why it's there. And, of course, I'm going to skip those words. I don't need to read them. So if there's a blank there, that's why. All right. This is Montag talking. It says, every hour, so many things in the sky. How did those bombers get up there every single second of our lives? Why doesn't someone want to talk about it? We've started and won 2 atomic wars since 2022. Is it because we're having so much fun at home we've forgotten the world? Now, by the way, that 2022 might be a different date, depending on which version of the book you're reading. They update this from time to time, and they kind of push the dates a little further ahead. We aren't far off from 2022, so pretty soon there'll be a new version of this. It'll say something like 2043 or something. It's meant to be the near future, not super far off, but still enough that we could see it. I think some of the books say 1996 even, so in that part. He says, is it because we're having so much fun at home we've forgotten the world? Is it because we're so rich and the rest of the world's so poor and we just don't care if they are? I've heard rumors that the world is starving, but we're well fed. Is it true the world works hard and we play? Is that why we're hated so much? I've heard the rumors about hate too once in a long while over the years. Excuse me. Do you know why? I don't, that's sure. Maybe the books can get us half out of the cave. They just might stop us from making the same insane mistakes. I don't hear those idiots in your parlor talking about it, Millie. Don't you see? An hour a day, 2 hours of these books, and maybe. So what Montag is doing here, and this is part of what Clarice's "Are you happy?" Statement has done, is it started making him think, and he starts looking around the world around him, and he sees a lot of stuff he doesn't understand. He's like, why are we now? War weariness is an element of dystopian novels. They almost always have some sort of war going on, and it's been a long-running war. It's much like our world today. This war with terrorism has been going on for decades, guys. So it's still continuing. And we're just kind of used to it at this point. But Montag's saying, I don't know what's going on. He says, I don't realize what's happening in the rest of the world. I hear the rest of the world doesn't like us. Why is that? And he's got all this confusion. And guys, the confusion's good. Confusion makes us start thinking and say, what's different? And Montag says, I don't know what's causing it. All I know is that the one thing I know we don't have are books. And so I'm looking at books to see what's there. Now, that's very naive. Obviously, the books aren't going to fix this problem or even really cast light on it, depending on what he's reading. But it shows that he's thinking. And it shows that he realizes things are not okay as is. We have to make a change. So Mildred gets mad. The phone rings. She starts going off and chittering about this stupid White Clown TV show. And so Montag gets back in his head and starts thinking about the second of the foreshadowing things we saw. This old man he met at a park a while back. Now, I told you way back in one of our early videos that there are 3 guides in this book. We had our first one, which is Clarice. This old man is the second one. It's a guy named Faber. And Montag thinks about him and remembers meeting this guy one time. It was a weird interaction. It's one of the parts of the book that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because Montag just sits on this bench next to this guy. It's like they're silent. All of a sudden, the man quotes some poetry to Montag out of the blue. And as they keep going, he gets more and more bold. So eventually he pulls a book out of his pocket and starts reading it to Montag. And then he actually even gives Montag his number. He knows Montag's a fireman, by the way. It says, if you want to do anything about it later, here's my number. In other words, if you feel like you need to bust me. I guess he just kind of like Clarice did. They kind of sense there's something different about Montag. So Montag thinks about that, and he decides, I still got that number. So he goes and picks it up, and he decides to call Faber. So let's learn a little bit about Faber. I'll read you that section. It says, it was a strange, quiet meeting. The old man admitted to being a retired English professor who had been thrown out upon the world 40 years ago when the last liberal arts college shut down for lack of students and patronage. Now, that's still the introduction to Faber, not the part I was talking about. But it's interesting to note that, and Bradbury was on top of this. And guys, this is a personal thing. I probably haven't ranted about this in your class, so this is a personal pet peeve of mine. I despise this new turn in our world to the only things that matter are engineering or nursing or being a doctor or business world, and liberal arts is for idiots and it's a sucker's bet. Nobody should major in that. That's for lazy people. It's completely ridiculous. And this Faber represents this idea that liberal arts is just a joke. It doesn't have a purpose because it's not something you can get a job in. I'm putting that quotation marks because you can get a job. But everyone thinks it's only teaching, but there's more than that. Liberal arts is valuable. It is exceptionally valuable for making good citizens and good people. There's a reason why so many people in business have no ethics and are just concerned about their own money and things like that. And it's because, really liberal arts is where we get that soul. It's where you learn about literature and you learn about philosophy and ethics and things like that. And that's important. We need people like that in the world. I wish we had more people like that in politics. I wish we had more people like that doing, businesses, because, I think our world would be a lot better. So, but he says the world's kind of gotten away from that, which we see that happening in our world. Once again, liberal arts is considered, you tell your parents you're majoring in that and they're going to, or majoring in something in the liberal arts, and they're going to probably roll their eyes at you. So, sorry, I'm trying to keep my voice up. I hope I'm not getting sick, but I sure feel like it. Montag calls up Faber, though, and he asks him a weird question. He asks him, hey, how many Bibles do you think are still around in the world? Of course, Faber's kind of nervous. He panics. He's like, there's none. You know that. Don't call me again, and hangs up the phone. But Montag is holding a copy of the Bible, and Bradbury is really smart in picking the Bible to be his book to use here. Because think about, it doesn't have the weight of any other book, especially when we're about to see Mildred say. So Montag walks out holding this Bible, and he starts talking to Mildred, and he tells her it might be the last copy in this part of the world. And then he starts thinking, well, what do I turn this book in? I mean, maybe the only one is, but do I turn in Thoreau? Do I turn in Shakespeare? I mean, Jefferson? What do I turn in? And Mildred flips out. She said, see what you're doing? You'll ruin us. Who's more important, me or that Bible? And that's such a hard statement to read. Guys, even if you're not a Christian, you can't deny the impact the Bible has. And Mildred's like, what's more important, me or the Bible? Well, obviously the Bible's more important than Mildred. But that's why Bradbury chose that book. It's really important that he picks the Bible, because especially something's going to happen later, that you'll see in one of our later videos, no other book would have the impact that this does, okay? All right, so Montag starts talking about what he's going to do next, and Mildred's only concerned that he's going to be there to watch this stupid TV show with her and her friends. They're all coming over. They're going to watch something called The White Clown, which we'll find out later what that is, and it's quite disturbing, to be honest with you. Montag asks her a pretty important question. He looks at her and he says, hey, Millie, does the White Clown love you? Does your family, and he means the TV, not himself, do they really love you? And one of the neat things here is that Mildred stops and thinks about it. So there is this element of thinking with her. And then she says, why'd you ask a silly question like that? And then that's the end of that section. So, she doesn't really want to discuss it, but I think she does know deep down that They don't. I mean, they're not real people. Now, kind of a neat thing that Bradbury does, and it's the very last part of what we're reading today. Um, Montag gets, I think, I don't know if he's walking towards the subway at this point. He starts thinking, and this is what he thinks. This is really key. He says the numbness will go away, he thought. It'll take time, but I'll do it, or Faber will do it for me. Someone somewhere will give me back the old face and the old hands the way they were. Even the smile, he thought, the old burning smile that's gone. I'm lost without it. Montag is going through just, this is stereotypical for people who have been awakened to something. Eventually, you get to the point of where you realize you kind of liked it better the way it was before when you were ignorant. And he wants to go back to that. You know, I don't know if you saw the Matrix movies, but there's the part where Morpheus offers him a red or a blue pill. And basically, but you're told if you take, and I don't remember which one it was, but the pill that makes you realize what's going on, you can't undo that. I know that one of the characters tries later, but you can't undo that. You know, once you know something, you are now responsible for dealing with that knowledge. You have to do something about it. It's why there's an old phrase, ignorance is bliss. And the point there is not knowing sometimes makes us happier. Right now, I feel that way about the news. I will try to avoid it as much as possible. And I'll catch myself going back and looking. But, you know, we're getting to the point where every time I turn around, no, another 1,000 people, have contracted this virus, or another 100 so have died. And it's so sad. And you think about, a month ago where this was something that was going on in China. There's a couple of cases here, and we didn't think much about it. So, on days where I find myself exceptionally depressed, which I'm prone to, I try to avoid this stuff because, again, ignorance is bliss. Well, the problem Montag has is he can't go back. Now that he started thinking, the door's been open, the floodgates are open, and now he's got to do something about it. He's going to realize that pretty quickly as we get into our next set of reading. So that's the end of the section of reading you guys had. Again, that should cover questions 1 through 7. So of the 25, I think there are questions, you should have the first probably quarter of them done if you just are doing it with the video and with the reading. All right. So guys, I'm going to take a small break. I'm going to come back. I'm going to film the next video too. I got to do the reading again and make some notes so I have something to follow, but I'll have those up, and I'll at least have the first 3 up. I'm going to try to get all 5. I'm going to at least have the first 3 up for you on Monday when class gets started back, so you can go ahead and work ahead if you choose to. All right. Okay. Thank you guys for paying attention and for watching these. I appreciate you all.